Hello and welcome to the Happiness Is podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness is Egg Shaped. And today is one of those days. At the beginning, there was the list of people that I wanted to speak to. There was people on there I'd never met, but I was keen to connect with. There was also just people I know, mates, people from the dark and distant past. And today is one of those. And I've made no notes. I've got my slippers on. I've got my juice and I'm ready for a good old blether and a catch up. We've actually been speaking for the best part of an hour before I hit record, and then we decided we better put something down. So, what do I say about this man? I don't actually know what his job is. I don't know where he is. He never sits still. He's got a wonderful, crazy wife and two crazy daughters. So, it sounds not too dissimilar to me. He loves the game. He's from just down the road from where I am originally, but we've both wandered pretty far and now we find ourselves here. So let's see what he's got to say. The one and the only, Mr. Neil Tunnah.
Thanks, Bruce. That was a great introduction, mate. Awesome
Um,
stuff.
right, let's start. Where are you?
Just outside Washington, D.C. at the moment. Small town called Emmitsburg, right in the heart of history of the U.S., just down the road from Gettysburg, where Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address. So, yeah, bouncing
Okay.
around. You can see I'm in a pretty average-looking hotel room.
Yeah,
It's all good.
pretty average hotel room for a pretty above average kind of guy.
Pretty average
But
bloke.
DC's not home, so where's home?
Nah, home. Living in the Adelaide Hills just now, Bruce. We got a house there just before COVID, actually, and then had planned to stay probably up in Europe for a while longer, but COVID kicked in, and we took 8 months to get ourselves back to Australia. And I'm now living in the heart of wine country. So to say I've developed a taste for half decent red wine would be an understatement.
I've said this before and I'll say it again, but you've changed. You've changed. Uh,
Yeah.
so, home is the Adelaide Hills. You're in Washington, D.C., but originally, home is God's country.
Yeah, home is the mighty Jed and the mighty Jed Forest. Bruce, that's home for sure. Grew up there. So that's, do you know what? For all the people that might watch this that are my mates, they would get stuck into me for being a Jap because my first few years, my old boy was a cop in Selkirk. So when I was born, we were in Selkirk, and then we actually went and had, I think, 2 years in Gala, Magdala Terrace in Gala Shields, I think it was. So had 2 years there, and my mum fell pregnant with my sister, and they took off to Selkirk. My old boy was a cop in Selkirk, so spent. Oh, mate, I think I was 10 when we moved to Jed. So formative years in Selkirk, and then hit Jed at 10. That was it from
And
there.
the rest is history. You're going to get pelters for any mates that are listening to this for this funny
Uh,
accent you've developed.
what do you mean? Every time, every time I jump in an Uber here in the US, they go, "You're from Australia," and I was like, "Nah, I'm from Jed."
Nice. Right, let's start from where you are now. What are you up to in the States?
Yeah, so about 18 months ago, I was back in Australia. I was working in rugby, doing a bit for the State Union and Rugby Australia. And then sort of bouncing ideas around with a guy I used to live next to in Jersey, actually, who's a sports psych. He's a clinical psychologist, sports psych, does a whole lot of leadership stuff in the corporate space. And we had a few glasses of red wine in Jersey and hatched this idea that if rugby ever sort of took a back seat, we'd have a look at putting a business together that takes some of the stuff from sort of sport around leadership and communication and performance into the corporate space. So that's what I'm doing. I'm here now trying to build some business, win some contracts. This is my fourth visit this year. So my frequent flyer miles are through the roof, so high that I managed to get a business class flight this time around. So that was nice. But yeah, it's all corporate stuff here in the US. Jimmy's got a business in Europe. We've got one in Australia, and look, I would say by the end of the year we'll have a business in the US as well, which is pretty cool. I'm flying by the seat of my pants, Bruce, to be quite honest with you, from a business perspective. But I've never been scared of a little bit of risk, so we'll have a crack at it and see how we go.
It's it's one of those situations where you're flying by the seat of your pants, which I'm not sure I quite agree with, but you're learning quickly, I would say.
Yeah.
But you seem like you've developed a real love for that in the last 10, 12 years, where you've picked up this idea that you can support people to improve, whether that be the way they catch and pass and scrum and line out. And now you're talking about working in the corporate world. What's brought you to this point?
Bruce, it's a great question. Actually, we've been going through a process with the business just in the last sort of couple of weeks, where we've employed our first person in Australia, and it's got us thinking we need to arm them with the tools to go out and win business. So we've been sitting going, right, what's our purpose here? Where's it come from? And to be honest, Bruce, over the last 10 or 12 years, I've been in some great work environments, and I've been really fortunate with some of the people I've worked with. I've also been in some really poor environments. And a lot of that learning comes from that. So taking pieces around an environment that works really well, where people belong and they're cared for and they feel like they're cared for and they've got a voice, and right down to the other side of it, where you walk in a room and everyone's operating under fear. So for me, that's where it comes from, is to try and take the learnings that I've got and help organizations and probably strategic decision makers in businesses to go, right, we can actually get more out of people if we set an environment that they want to come into, first and foremost. So what does that look like? And then we go through the process. We can get into culture, which is probably an overused word and everything like that. But ultimately it comes down to, right, as a leader, what kind of environment do you want to shape for your people? We touched on this when we were off air before. I think the big thing for me is environment. So as a leader, you're responsible for creating an environment. And then obviously there becomes, you start to talk about skin in the game and contribution from others and all that kind of stuff. But look, long-winded answer, that's where it comes from, is just a desire to help businesses and organizations and leaders create spaces where people can come in and love coming to.
There was a moment, and you didn't know this, I've never told you this before, but there'll be people listening to this who have no idea how well we know each other and sort of our story. So I'm just going to tell a little bit of a story, and then I'm going to tell you this moment. So you came to play for a club I was coaching. At the time, struggling for identity. I was a young, naive coach who thought it was his turn and had all these ideas and wanted to make it happen. You were a player who was kind of on the fringes, but I could see how important you were. But honestly, I couldn't fit the jigsaw piece into the puzzle, is the polite way to put it. I didn't know what to do with you. You then had a bit of a roller coaster, and I'm not quite sure. I didn't know you well enough for what was happening outside the training field and the changing room and the game to know. I think you were struggling for identity, if I'm honest, at the time. I think you had an idea of a bigger purpose, but you didn't have it at that point, and you maybe didn't know how to access it. You then were injured, and I'm still not sure how injured you were, but at the time I needed a forwards coach, and almost by accident, it was one of those things. You were there, I trusted you, you trusted me, we'd built a decent relationship. And then I'm going to tell you this moment. So we split forwards and backs. I'm across there and you were doing lineouts, and you were doing stuff with a lineout I'd never seen before. Right. And you were looking at quite technical things of making them better at lifting and jumping and the timing of the throw. And I looked across and I thought, I love that. And there was an energy to what you were doing. And before that, I don't think I'd given it any thought. I didn't know you were going to be a coach. I didn't know we were going to be sitting where we are having this conversation, and you were in DC in a flying business class and all that, right? I didn't see that in my crystal ball for you. I didn't know what that would be. And I'm really proud to have seen it, and I'm really proud to be listening to you and to having this chat. Did you have a moment where you thought, actually, coaching and helping folk, this is for me, that's the thing, I'm going to go after that?
Yeah, I probably didn't realize that until it had passed. To be honest, I'll go back a stage or two. Bruce, you touched on something there that I think is really important. I was lost until I was probably 30 in terms of identity. I was in construction. I hated it. I'd never loved it, so I did it since I was 16. It was just never my thing, but I had no idea what was my thing. And I think you kind of nailed it there. When I went to Australia, that changed for me in a big way. Now, if you remember at Watsonians, Bruce, I failed a drugs test when I was playing for you. So there's quite an interesting story here. It's quite funny actually. So I'm walking down a street in Chatswood in Sydney, and my phone rings, and it's a UK number, and there's some bloke comes on and says, "Oh, Neil Tunnah." I was like, "Yeah, Neil Tunnah." He was like, "It's such and such from UK anti-doping. Yeah, you've returned a positive test." And I'm like, I've gone piss off and put the phone down. And the reason I've done that is because a whole load of the boys knew that I'd tested it, and I thought it's just the boys taking the piss. It was a month later or something like that. Next thing, there's an email comes through, and sure enough, it is what it is. So, which again, as a story, was like it links with how I ended up in coaching in Australia. So I went across and I was going to play for a team called Knox Old Boys, suburban staff, training a Thursday, playing a Saturday. Great bunch of boys. I'd done a pre-season with them, and it was awesome. But I got this thing that came through, and I remember having to come to yourself and the president at Watsonians. I had to go to some people at SRU and get references to say, listen, he's a decent bloke, he's just an idiot, which is pretty much what I was. I bought a supplement over the counter at some store in Edinburgh, and it had something in it, and I got tested and failed. So I'm in Australia, and this has happened, and the club, Knox Old Boys, were absolutely brilliant. They came and said, right, you can't play, and we're not going to play you, which was the right thing to do, and I was happy with that. But they said, look, we're going to give you a crack. You can coach the under-20s, which I wasn't meant to do because I wasn't meant to have any involvement. But it was low-key stuff, and they've gone, listen, just go and coach the under-20s. And that was where I picked up coaching in Australia, but that's not where I realised that, I guess, I don't want to sound wanky here, but it's, I guess, what was my calling, if you like. And it's back now to that. When I look at that now, that time at Watsonians, Bruce. So you gave me the opportunity to step in. If I hadn't had that, mate, I don't reckon I would be involved in the game now. I wouldn't be involved in any way, shape, or form if you hadn't come to me and say, come on in and coach. And Chops came on board there as well, and I and Chops really hit it off. So I was really appreciative of the trust there. But when I sort of fast forward to 2015, 2016, when I'm suddenly in a room full of Waratahs and Wallabies, and I've got imposter syndrome, I'm sitting on my shoulder, I'm coaching the NRC, going, why the hell would these blokes listen to me? I look back to that point, and I guess gratitude's what I feel. The opportunity you gave me there, Bruce, and I loved it. And that I can remember that session you're talking about under the floodlights.
Right in front of the stand. You were doing a lineage right in front of the stand. It's giving me shivers. And
Bruce, I was literally flying by the seat of my pants. But what I felt...
So was that.
We still do. Do. But all I knew... When I was thinking about doing that, and when I was doing, all I knew about it was that this makes more sense than what we normally do, because the movement and the action, and you know, I mean, just trying to get guys moving, just trying to make it more like a game. That's what it was ultimately. And whether I was right or wrong at that moment in time, I had no idea, because I really didn't. But the boys seemed to enjoy it, and yeah, I enjoyed playing around with it. And that's, from a rugby coaching perspective, again, Bruce, I've never been scared to try things and fail. Like, if it doesn't work, I don't care. I'll just work out how to make it work.
But is that, so there's loads in there. You're nearly making me cry as well, but there's loads in there. Are you happy to try and fail because you love it so much that you can handle rejection? Like, I sometimes feel that coaching's a bit like I'm not going to use the extreme, but a difficult relationship where because the highs are so very, very high, you can handle the days where you have a crossword.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, and look, that's the bit, I'll be honest with you, that's the bit I'm missing right now. So I love what I'm doing with the business. I love the travel, the meeting new people, the helping organizations. Like, I'll touch on a little while about an organization down in Atlanta we're doing some work with, and look, that's where my buzz comes from, is helping people and supporting people. But I miss the side of rugby that gives you those highs and lows. I miss as much as the winning, I miss having to walk into a room on a Monday morning and you just had your pants pulled down, and you walk into the room as a coach, and the players are looking for they're not looking for the answers necessarily, but they're looking to see what mood you're in. So I miss that part of walking in and being able to go, do you know what? It's going to be all right because we've got another week ahead of us, and we're going to get better. So that's the highs and lows are brilliant. I love that. I've got no fear of failing. Rejection
But
of
did you have that? You're working in construction. I can remember you pulling into training, wearing the suit I think you had a company car at the time.
Yeah.
And I can remember you saying about your job, and it was obvious you didn't love it. I didn't know you well enough at that point to know what state it was, but I knew that you weren't particular. Does that mean if you're not enjoying it, the lows are even lower and the highs are just kind of, I'm not emotionally involved, so it doesn't give me the buzz? Is that a fair comparison between the two?
Yeah, I think it is. I'm trying to think of examples for you here, Bruce. There's a period at Jersey where I wasn't enjoying it at all, and the club was having its best success that it ever had, but I was walking into work every day, Bruce, and the environment wasn't right, and I guess I feel that, and that's me. I guess I'll go back a stage or two here as well. Like you gave me a lot of learnings, Watsonians as well. Like I never felt like I fully fitted as a rugby player, but I always fully fitted as a person. And the relationships that we were able to build, not just yourself, but then you chuck Hoggy and Donny in the mix there, you chuck Chops in the mix, and you chuck guys like Jamie Blackwood and Tory, and we, as much as we weren't necessarily winning, I think it was a good bunch of boys who loved spending time together. So that was an example of that. But there was times when I was walking into work at Jersey, Bruce, and I didn't want to go because the environment wasn't where it needed to be to allow people to thrive. So there was a lot of people operating under fear there, and I think fear can get results, but I think they're short term. But that's back to the highs and lows. I think you learn to navigate them. The other thing I learned with the lows is like to go to your cabinet and the people that you trust and share things with them and get ideas from them and work out how to get through it, which again, that's part of failure, is working out how to get through it and come out the other side. And even though I had some lows there, like I was at West Harbour in Sydney as well, Bruce, I had a year there and I coached and I got sacked after a year. And that was partially my fault, absolutely partially my fault, but it was also partially the way the club was operating. It was a revolving door and there was always the coach as the excuse. But I got things massively wrong from a people management perspective. I had 85% Polynesian players, and I hadn't learned as a young head coach at that stage that it's about the individual. It's not about the whole team. It's about the individual. You get the individual piece right, then the whole team can come together. So again, the learnings through failure, to sort of bring that full circle, that's where the best learnings have been. And Bruce, I'm so grateful for those, because they are ultimately why I am who I am now, in a sense. So, and that's driving why we're running the business as well, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I love it. Let's go to the cabinet. Who's in there from those days of wee daft Tunnah at school?
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate, Bruce. Like I've said this to you before off record, is I think relationships are everything. So sort of in my 10 years in Australia, being connected with Australia, I've probably got half a dozen people in there. So I would go, and one of these will cause a stink in Scotland, actually, but Matty Williams.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, but Bruce, I'll be honest, for everything you read about him, what I will say about him is he's been absolutely brilliant for me, because he's been honest, and that's what I want. I want direct honesty, even if it's not what I want to hear. I want to hear it, and he does that in spades. He tells me when he thinks I'm being an idiot, and he tells me when he thinks it's a great idea, and I just appreciate that honesty. And look, he gave me a job at a time because I was in construction in Sydney as well, mate, and I hated it. Like I was in a job, project manager, big commercial construction company, making stupid money, and I pulled up outside the office one day and I phoned my missus and I said, "I'm done. I'm done." And she's like, "What do you mean? We've just had our first kids. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do?" And I just went, "I'm going to coach rugby." And she's like, "Have you got a job?" And I went, "No." And she just went, "Well, if you think you can do it, do it." I was like, "But I'm going to walk in and resign right now." And she's like, "Okay, I'll back you." So that tells you a little bit about her, which again, she's a rock in sense of that. She gives me the confidence to sort of make decisions. But so back to the story, I picked up the phone to Matt at Knox. So you and Clark is at Glasgow now, coaching in the academy. Ewan said, "Oh, Knox might be looking for someone to do a bit of scrum work." So I phoned Matty and I said, "Matty, I need a bit of work, mate. Is there anything doing?" And he said, "Yeah, come on in, we'll catch up." So, mate, he gave me 10 hours a week coaching scrum at Knox. And look, it was great because it got me into a coaching environment where I was spending 10 hours more than I had previously. And I think, again, you talk about coaching, and it's time in the saddle and practice. The opportunity to practice makes you a better coach. But so Matty was great. Within 3 weeks, mate, I pretty much had a full-time job at Knox. Hit it off with him and Ty Glassy, and he's been great to me. So he's one of the cabinet. Then you've got, I speak to Andy Friends probably, mate, once every couple of weeks, once every 2 or 3 weeks. And Friendy's brilliant as well. I've been chasing jobs in the last 2 years since I left Jersey, and I haven't picked anything up, which is cool. But I've gone through a lot of interviews, and Friendy's been great, mate, in terms of advice and support. He's just a quality human being, mate, like pulled right out the top drawer. Really, really great guy. Then I got another guy who I'm actually in business partner in Australia, Michael Pullman. He's got an air of calm about him. So he's good at where I maybe get off on one. He's good at pulling me back in and saying, "Hey, just calm down. Everything's going to be okay." Then I've got Jimmy, who is based in Europe. Jimmy runs the European side of the business, and again, he was my next door neighbor when I was at Jersey, and he's brilliant as well. He's an energizer bunny, mate. Every time I have a Zoom with him, whether it's about business or it's about anything, I come off and I just want to go and dominate the world. Like I want to take everything on head first. Like it's brilliant. So that's sort of the cabinet, Bruce. There's a mix of people in there.
Come on, and let's go back to Jed. Who's in the cabinet for Jed?
There's probably no one in the cabinet, right? But I've got close mates still there. Like if I bumped into them tomorrow in Jed, it would be like I bumped into them yesterday. There is a coaching influence in Jed that, like, I've got 2 or 3 coaching influences, Bruce, and you're one of them, mate, because the way you went about your business at Watsonians from an organization perspective was something that always really stuck with me, that I've carried with me. Like we used to walk into the changing rooms on a Tuesday night and the session plans are all over the wall. So you get an opportunity to see what's coming and prepare yourself mentally for that, which I loved. Alan Goodfellow at Jed was another one. Goody was absolutely brilliant from start to finish. Coached me as a kid. When I look at Goody, mate, I think the honesty is something that there's a trend there. So a spade is a spade. If you're a dick, you're a dick, and you know about it. But also a really, really good coach and a really good people person. He always just seemed to get it right with his communication and the way he connected with you, and the environment that he set up for you. And mate, he was a bloody good rugby coach as well, technically and tactically at that time. So
the Borders just still blows my mind. You know, I feel very lucky to have the roots that I've got, and I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah.
The town of Jed has got no right at all to have the position of prominence that it does in the world of rugby. It's a tiny little town that it doesn't even punch above its weight. It's winning medals above its weight. Like unbelievable the influence it's having, not just on the field between the white lines, but the coaches, Roy Laidlaw, his legacy is going to go for a long time. And then there's others. While Gary Armstrong's not necessarily involved in the game, if you ask anybody kind of our generation and probably 10 years older, who was the best scrum half in the world, it was Gary Armstrong. You've then got the Laidlaw boys. You're out in the world doing good things. There's Clark's in charge of New Zealand Sevens program. Like for a small town, that's bonkers.
Yeah, it's funny. You never really think about it, but there's definitely something special about the place, Bruce. And I honestly don't know what it is. I think it's probably like you live and breathe it, Bruce. The same as in Gala, right? I remember playing for Jed when I was 23, 24, and I'm walking up the high street, and some lady that works in the baker has walked out the door and said, "Hey, good luck today. You're playing for Jed." I'm like, this is unbelievable. And like it probably comes back a little bit to that belonging piece and how powerful that is. And look, I don't have many regrets in my life, Bruce, and I'm really grateful for my time at Watsonians. I really enjoyed that. I was at Edinburgh a little bit, and while there was good people, I didn't enjoy that. But I had if there's a regret, I'd probably go back and just play all my club rugby at Jed. I would just have stayed there forever because I was playing with my mates. I was playing with the same guys that I came through from mini rugby through into the Jed team. And look, I was really grateful for that, and I am grateful for it now. I just wish I'd had more of it.
Yeah, it's. I've spoken to a few people about this. The time that we fell into the club game was really confusing, and I could say something really similar to what you've said. That confusion between professionalism and amateur, and the club game was trying to be something that actually it couldn't sustain and didn't sustain. And I get that. 100% get that. The thing I love about a place like Jed is a bit like you've touched on there. The lady comes out the bakers. It's that involvement and immersion in this is our outlet. It's not just yours. It's not just those 15 guys that are playing. It's the people on the sideline, the people in the kitchens, the people in the turnstiles, the people selling programs, the old guys at the bar who you never actually appreciated. They've got 250 games doing what you did, yet you think you're Johnny Big Rocks because you've played 12 games like that. I didn't appreciate that, and I think a lot of that fell out the game when it went professional here, and we lost a lot of our identity. When you were at Jed, what was the changing room like? What was training like? What was the atmosphere like in amongst that small town team?
Yeah, it's just mates taking the piss out of each other constantly, Bruce. It was brilliant. Like, and mate Clark was in that team. I was lucky enough that when Gary'd been in Newcastle and he came back to the Borders, and Gary came and played. Like Gary was a hero. Roy was a hero. Bruce, like I grew up literally worshipping Roy Laidlaw. And then my sister married his middle son. Do you know what I mean? So I'm like, how has this happened? But I remember, like, again, I'll go back in a story here, Bruce. I remember being 7 or 8 and from Selkirk. And my dad took me across. My dad was always a Jed supporter. He took me across the game. And the ball boys on the sideline were Scott Laidlaw and Gary Hill and these boys. And I ended up sitting in front of the sponsors board with the ball boys, Gary, Scott, Ewan Lindors. I can't remember who it all was, but I was instantly welcomed. Like I sat down, I was a boy from another town. I was playing rugby for Selkirk Minis at the time. I sat down at this board in Jed, and like it was like I was one of them, and I absolutely loved it. So it was a special place in terms of that. Always felt like I belonged there at Jed from a rugby perspective. I mean, the changing room was brilliant. It's great fun. Like I could tell you some stories, mate. We far out. We were playing against Roddy actually. Hoik Boxing Day. I think it was Boxing Day or the day after Boxing Day. And you know yourself in the Borders, Boxing Day is a massive day on the beers. And we were playing the next day, so we had a massive day in the beers and Boxing Day. I remember being in Scott's house at like 2:30 in the morning, and we were drinking shots or something, and we're all going, shit, we got to play Hoik tomorrow. and played Hoik the day after Boxing Day. We're in the changing room, we're all hungover, but we went out and we played the game, and it was brilliant. But the thing I remember about that was the size of the crowd the day after Boxing Day. And Bruce, I reckon there'd be 2,000 there. It was massive, and I remember running out and it was against Hoik, so it was Hoik Jed. You know what those games are like. Roddy was playing. I'm trying to think who else would have been playing.
Oh, Veggie, Landals,
Yeah, all those
Ev
boys.
Reed, take your pick. Yeah,
all those guys were playing, and it was absolutely brilliant. And I honestly don't feel like I'd had 200 beers the day before, as did the rest of us. But we took the field and it didn't matter, and it was brilliant fun. We got battered uphill and down Dale by a brilliant Hoik team. But then we got in the bar after and had great banter with them, and that's the beauty of Borders rugby, I think, Bruce, is that like you kick the shit out of each other for 80 minutes, but then everybody gets in the bar after, and it's a big community thing.
See, yes, I get it, but that went missing because people were playing that weren't necessarily fully belonging to the place, and that made me sad. Still makes me sad, and I'm guilty of that. Like I was one that flew the nest, so I'm guilty of that. When you see other Jed folk doing well, and Glenn Young's just got his cap, is there a warm fuzzy feeling inside?
Bruce, when you said that, it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Like, it's brilliant to like really, really proud of seeing those people, whether it's Clark or Glenn or Greg, or to see everyone doing so well. It's just brilliant, mate. It's absolutely brilliant. It's a town of 4,500 people, Bruce. Let's say you touched on it before, 4,500 people, and it's consistently punched above its weight in terms of its contribution to and influence on the game. So to see Glenn running out for Scotland, my cousin's really good mates with Glenn. So I've sort of, I guess, I don't know Glenn too well. I know him, but not too well. But my cousin's close with him, and you get some of the stuff. He's been on a journey. You know, I mean, he's gone from Newcastle. He was at Newcastle, and he was told he'd never be big enough for the Premiership. He's gone to Harlequins, and he's a very, very, very good line-out operator. Not just an operator, but a tactician as well. So, and he's gone to Quins, and I think he had some injury troubles there, but then he's gone to Edinburgh, and it's no surprise that he's now playing for Scotland, because he's obviously a very, very driven and motivated young man. And it's just great to see, and he's doing it in home territory. Like Edinburgh's the closest there is to a home pro team now for the Borders, so to see him doing it from there is really nice.
He scored a try for the halfway line, and he was champing wines and champing grapes and making wine the last 15 years. But it was an absolute belter. I love him to bits. And there's the influence of Jed keeps going. Chloe Rowley playing sevens, commie games for Scotland. You know, carving it up down south and for Scotland. The women's representation is now just fantastic, and it just adds to the story of that wee tune.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And look at the women's game. If there's growth in the game, that's what it is. So again, to see someone like Chloe, and she's obviously motivated as well, because she's gotten herself up. She's gotten out of Jed. She's gone and looked for opportunities to develop and grow. And again, like, there'll be so much. I don't know her. I don't know her journey, but I would wager the same as me and Clark and Greg and all these people. Like, there'll be so much learning in there through adversity and failure, but it's because you're willing to get up and go and dig and see what it's all about. And it's great. Like, I think I'm like you, Bruce. I've got two little girls, so I would love nothing more than them to have the opportunity to explore rugby. And girls like Chloe are they can be an inspiration for my little girls as well. So it's awesome.
She's class. She's a brilliant lady. There's something that strikes me in what you just said there. Chloe Rowley, get up and go. You, Greg, Greg didn't have it easy. People were more than willing to point out things that he could be better at, but he made absolute super strengths out of his strengths. Clark Laidlaw, a boy for Jed, is in charge of the All Black 7 squad. Like that's crazy. You're out changing the world. Chris Laidlaw, I've got high hopes for him. I've got no doubt Chris is going to climb the coaching ladder. He's an absolute outstanding human. I've written it down here, and it's something I've always thought of you. And every time you phone me and you're up to something new, it's if somebody had to said to me, "How do you describe Tunnah?" There's a few things I would say, but one of them, single-minded. Like you really go for it. There's an idea, it's for you, and you're going to put all your time and energy and enthusiasm into it.
Yeah.
Is that fair? Is that something that you're aware of?
I think, I think it's a strength and a weakness. So I'm good at jumping in with 2 feet, and I'm quite comfortable with that, to be honest, Bruce. And I tell you where I think that comes from. We touched on that earlier on. Is I feel like I've got an identity now. Like I know what I'm all about, and I know what matters to me. I know what's important. I know I've got really sound reasoning behind what I'm doing. I don't always get it right. I make lots of mistakes. I'm comfortable making mistakes. But I think having that identity and understanding who I am and what I'm here for, I think that helps me with that single-mindedness. Like I said to you there, I'm happy. I'm happy just going for it. Bruce, what I will say is the whole thing comes off the ability. I think the whole thing comes off the ability to build relationships with people. So the ability to connect with people gives me the confidence that I can sort of roll the sleeves up and have a go. I think Australia's got a little bit of influence there as well. So Australia's a little bit like the US in terms of you can do all right if you're willing to roll your sleeves up and have a go. I never felt like that in Scotland, Bruce, if I'm honest. Always felt, and I'm not putting the blame on Scotland here. I'm putting it on my lack of identity. So me not knowing really who I was or what it was all about until I got a taste of that coaching with you at Watsonians, and I was just sitting up and going, all right, there's something different here. So
right, what you've just said there, I love. Like, it's absolutely amazing. When I was speaking at Graham Moffat in Canada, he said something really similar. Sounds like he wasn't comfortable with who he was or hadn't found his identity till a bit later than 30.
Yeah.
I don't think I found it until a bit later. I've never been happier and sort of more certain of who I am and what I want from life and what I think is important. But there's a massive push, and I didn't want this to turn into, but we couldn't have had that at 18. How can you have that at 18?
No.
So when a young player or a young person arrives at you and you can see that, it's not really our job to find their identity. It's just our job to help them at that moment.
Yeah.
How much a kick do you get out of that?
Oh, it's massive, Bruce. It's massive. Like, I think the rugby side of things is probably the easiest place to point at here. So I've got in the last since I did the NRC in 2015. There's a list of players, Bruce, who I've worked with that have all gone on to Super Rugby, or they're playing in the Premiership, or they've gone and playing for the Wallabies. Jed Holloway's playing for the Wallabies for the first time this weekend against Argentina, and I'm a very, 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 very small blip on their radar, but I get immense pride from being someone that was part of their journey. And their journey is because of everything that they've done, with a little bit of help and support from others along the way. So to think that I'm a pinprick of that support at some point on his journey, and he's 29 and he's going to play for the Wallabies for the first time, so he's done it the hard way. That's what it's about, isn't it? That's the pride. And helping others achieve their goals. And
there's a nice thing. There's a nice thing about coaching in that you can see an instant. Like you can get an instant. You said you sort of grateful. I think you said earlier. You can see them in that session or in that game get that thing right, or they've improved it because of your maybe a little bit of input and engagement. So there's that immediacy of warm fuzzy feeling I'm doing a good job here.
Yeah.
There's then that by the end of the season, look, we've made improvement. You know, there's an obvious objective improvement.
Yeah.
But then there's the stories that you've just told there that you can't predict, you can't plan for, you can't even have that as a need. You can't a need to hear that he's going to play for the Wallabies in 10 years' time. But it's so nice, isn't it, to know that there's that like you telling stories about Watsonians like blows my mind. The hairs in the back of my neck. You must have had some really nice moments where somebody just drops you a message and goes, "By the way, I'm doing this. Thank you."
Yeah. So I had one probably 12 months ago. There's a lad called Nick Dolly who plays two for Leicester, and Nick came to us on loan my last season just before COVID kicked in. So he came to us on loan from Sale where he was struggling. He played for England under 20s, an Aussie kid who grew up about 10 miles from where I was living in Sydney when I was last there. Really, really good kid. And talk about work ethic. This kid was phenomenal. Like him and a guy called Josh Bainbridge, every session they built a game around Jackal. So, and I love the contact side of the game. And listen, all like for 90% of the time, they're going for another 45 minutes after training, and they're working on Jackal. And sometimes I'm just holding a phone for them to film it or an iPad to film it. But I'm there with them and I'm watching them progress and get better and bounce off each other and learn off each other. And so Nick shot me a message. He got picked for England for the first time, and I've obviously gone, "Hey mate, it's great to see what you're doing." And he just came straight back, and he was, "Listen, Tunnah, I couldn't have done it without you. So thanks for your help." And he was with us for 4 months, and to think, I hadn't really thought about it, but to think that he thinks that I've had an influence on his career, mate, is really humbling, really, really humbling. Because I don't think of it like that at all. I just love helping people. I love working with guys like that and guys who are willing to put the time and effort in. It's not rocket science. Like, you put the time and effort in, you're going to get better. To see him kicking his goals and run out for England for the first time, Bruce, is just brilliant. I'm so happy for him. So happy for him.
Talking about being a bit happy with your identity, if we'd had this chat, which we wouldn't have done, but if we'd been talking like this 15 years ago, you wouldn't have been saying that you loved things and that you loved helping people and that you could handle failure. So that's obviously part of the journey, and that's who you've become. Now, in the role you've got, storytelling's a massive part of it.
Yeah.
How has that, all those things that we've been talking about up to this point, how has that helped you develop your storytelling?
Yeah, I think storytelling is a critical component of building relationships first and foremost. But then when it gets into training environments, rugby environments, work environments, it's a really interesting space we were working in, because part of it, what we're trying to do is we're trying to help leaders become better coaches. So like we define it, the difference between a trainer, a mentor, and a coach. So a coach is someone who asks great questions, Bruce. And I'll take this back to, we spoke offline where you gave me an example and you weren't sure if it was great coaching, and what you explained, the way you explained it to me, that's world-class coaching, because you were using a series of questions with a young athlete to lead them to a place in their brain where they can think about what they're doing and come up with the answers. So that, for me, that's brilliant coaching. So brilliant coaching isn't walking in and telling a group of players, this is what we're going to do and this is the way we're going to do it. It's to give them an environment where they can explore. So storytelling is, that probably sits a little bit in the mentor bracket for me. So there's a lot of that goes on in the way we present and the way we design programs to deliver. There is an interest in the professional sports background, obviously, particularly in the US. It's a bit of a hook for us here. But I think walking in and sharing stories, it's a skill to learn to tell stories in the right way and get your messages across. But the thing that underpins it all is, I think, is like being authentic. So being your real self when you share stories. So how do you use emotion? How do you use body language? How do you express yourself? And I think the levels of engagement, when you get that right, people sit back and they start to think about their own stories and how they can connect and relate. And it's really powerful stuff.
I think rugby players are good actors. I know you're talking about being your real self, and we now talk that we can be that person, but in a changing room and possibly in front of a group of players, we're often putting on another persona.
Yeah.
You like me have stood up and held a microphone and sung a song, whether you know the words or not. You've been forced to do it. You've made a speech. You've given this. You've presented an award. You've done all those things as a coach in a game like rugby that is still rooted in amateur ethos. Whether you're an international or not, you still do a lot of those things.
Yeah.
How much is acting a part of the roles you fulfill now?
Geez, that's a good question, Bruce. I've never thought of it like that. I'm thinking scenarios where, so pitching for business is probably one where, and again, like I've sought some expertise in this space because I think I'm quite good at building relationships with people, but it's different building a relationship with people to actually sitting down and explaining what you do and getting a contract over the line. That's different. So I think I'm quite good at that relationship piece, getting at someone's level, getting to know about them, what's their family, their background, why are they where they are, where are they trying to get to, how did they get to where they are. I'm pretty good at that. But that other side around getting deals over the line, that's where I'm uncomfortable. And I don't get me wrong, bro, I love being uncomfortable with it, and I've surrounded myself now with 2 or 3 people that work in that space, and what they're telling me is that the best salespeople, and I'm talking from the acting perspective here, the best salespeople find a way to be themselves and be authentic. So, like I said, we had a meeting the other day, and we're talking strategically about the business in an office in Adelaide, and we're talking about what the business does and why it does it. And ultimately, what I've done is I've created this business, and then I've brought other people on board. So Mikey's an investor. We've just employed Tommy, and they're going to explain why you started the business. And I just went, because I've been in some good environments and shit environments, and I want to help create more good environments. And they're like, you got to walk into boardrooms and say that. And I was like, well, why? And they're like, because the way you delivered it, it's obviously you. So that acting piece, I'm trying to keep away from it. But that's probably the place that I slip into it most just now, is thinking that I need to sell, and that needs to be an act rather than, hey, we can help your business here. How can we help your business? Well, you're going to retain more people. Your turnover in staff's going to be less. You're going to get more out of the people that do work for you, and they're going to love coming here and be part of it. So that acting question is a really good question. I've never thought about that before.
Yeah, it's I just sometimes being yourself is not who your audience want to see, and I'm interested. Being a teacher, there's often an act on. They need to know that this has happened in my life because they just need me to be their teacher, and I'm always interested to hear about in other industries. So you're now in America. You're like the Beatles. You've gone across to crack America. How do you start
in the same breath as the Beatles?
how does a wee lad for Jed, who's actually for Selkirk and now in Australia, how do you go across, and why go with you? What's Tunnah bringing?
Yeah, well, I think I guess I'll precurse that with everything here is coming from relationships that I've built through the game. So I've been coming here since 2014 and sort of helping a university here, Emmitsburg, Mount St. Mary's. You met Jay actually at Roslyn Park Sevens. And look, I've just been helping them, Bruce, for the last sort of 7 or 8 years. In that time, I've built some trust with the alumni network and the people that run the school. And everything we're doing comes off the back of that. So there's a trust there already.
Right, hang on. Can I pause you there? You weren't building those relationships to get business benefits out of them in 8 years' time.
No.
So this is probably a nice side effect of just that relationships that you're obviously passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've done is we've sat, like we've got well, there's a group of 4 actually now. So I've got the business in Australia, and I've got an investor, but he also works in the business. And then Jimmy, we've got what I call a collaborative partner, and that will all change in the next 12 months. And Jimmy's got an investor there, and we caught up in London 4 weeks ago and went through a sort of strategic planning thing. And look, it comes back to exactly what you said there. It is about relationships and building trust and showing value, and that's where it's come from for me here. So in terms of point of difference, I'm not walking into the market saying that we've got some flashy product that you've never seen this before and it's going to blow your mind and blow your world. What we've got is we've got runs on the board that show that we've got the ability to build trust and help people improve. And that's the biggest selling point is we've done this before. We've done it in different industries, across different industries with different people. And people in the alumni networks have that trust already, so they'll sit and have a chat to you about it. Look, if there's value now, great, and they want to do something, that's awesome. That value might come in 10 years' time, which we're completely happy with as well. It's about right for us. Again, it's back to that people thing, Bruce. It's about what's right for people at that moment in time. So if we're right for them now, then great. If we're not, let's stay in touch and see where we are in 5 years' time, 6 years' time.
In all the podcasts I've done, there's people that have achieved the goal they had when they were 5, right? They played for England, they've won this, they've done right. They've achieved the thing, but nobody has gone on the ladder. Nobody has gone step by step. They've not, that stairway to success, however you want to phrase it. There's no way in hell Neil Tunnah at 15, 21, 30 could have predicted you were going to be sitting here in this situation, 2 kids, home in the Adelaide Hills, flying here to have a meeting, to there to set up a business. Where's Tunnah in 10 years?
Far right. Don't know. That's the answer.
Because the thing I love speaking to you, and coming back to that single-minded thing, you're all in, right? Yeah. The thing you're doing just now, and I'm not surprised you can't answer it. Maybe it was unfair, because 10 years' time will kind of take care of itself if I deal with just now. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's exactly where I am. And don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that I haven't got. There's a little look out the side of my eye thinking about 10 years' time, because I bring this back to strategy. We've got a strategy with the business, right? We want to be in a place where that in 10 years' time where we have a decision around whether we keep it or whether we sell it. And that's overarching strategy between a group of people. But none of that happens if I don't focus on the now. So it's very much, right, what are we doing now? How are we setting ourselves up? How are we building this now so that we can build it further next year and build it further the year after that? And it gets us to a point where, we're doing something we love doing with people that are, like, I bring this back to people, Bruce. Like the people we have involved in this are, like, they're just brilliant humans, really, really good people that make me want to be a better person as well. So every day is a build day, and I'll get up in the morning and I'll do what needs to be done that day, and I'll have a look at tomorrow and go, right, what's happening there and what's happening next week. But I'm not looking too far in the future. We know what we want to do. We're going to try and do it. We're going to focus on getting it right now.
So time's ticking. I've loved it. Absolutely loved it, as I always do, chatting to you. You've worked with some good people. You've worked with some people that's been challenging. You've inspired some that have gone on and do great things. You've inspired some, hopefully, just to stay in the game and get a kick out of that. You read a lot. You're on WhatsApp groups every day. You're on Zoom calls. You're networking. If there was somebody that you could, let's go. If you could have a coffee with somebody, who would it be? If you could coach with somebody, who would it be? And if you could work with a player, who would it be? So let's start. Who would you have a coffee with? Anybody. Okay. Take your pick. Anybody to have a cup of coffee with. You can take him for a beer if you want.
Go for a beer. I'd go for a beer with Wayne Smith.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not
there's
even going to
no.
ask why. I'm not even going to. That's a belter. Who could you go and coach with? Whether it's be their assistant or coach alongside them,
Yeah.
or not necessarily in rugby. Who would you go and coach with? Who would you love to see that close and personal?
Friendly. I'd love to coach with Friendly. I think he's, and I'll tell you the reason why here, Bruce, is because he understands it's about people. So there's lots of coaches in the pro game that are it's W's and L's, and players are commodities, staff are commodities, and it's almost at all costs. Whereas Friendly's the opposite of that, mate. He builds environments where people feel like they can come and be their best. So
Do you know what I'm going to say about Andy Friend? Right, here's my measure for somebody like Andy Friend. He's coaching at Connacht. You didn't go there for the W's in it. Like, you go there for an environment, a place to be part of a place and a culture. I know you build your own in that club, in the thing that
yeah,
you're a leader in, but to go there, I'm desperate to go. I'm absolutely desperate to go. The people I've met for Connacht have always been
yeah,
magic. I love the rugby. I love the fighting spirit. I love the
yeah,
underdog. I love what Pat Lam did. I can understand why he left, but tough act to follow. And then
yeah.
in comes a guy like him, and I just think, I didn't know him. I've heard you talk about him, but I just, if you're the head coach of Connacht and you stay that long, I just think you're a good guy.
Yeah, totally agree. 100% agree. Like I went across there. Geez, I went across to see him, Bruce. I think it was the Christmas at my second year. Listen to this trip. So I flew from Jersey to Gatwick. I got a bus from Gatwick to Heathrow. I got a flight from Heathrow to Dublin, and I got a bus to Galway. I had 2 nights.
You do really want to work with him.
Mate, I had 2 nights, and then I did the same travel home again. It was over Christmas and New Year, but he welcomed me with open arms. The staff he had there, so he had Jimmy Duffy, he had Nigel Carolan, he had Pete Wilkins was there at the time. The players, like, I walked in the door and it was like, you talk about belonging, mate. It was like everyone just welcomed you, and it was absolutely brilliant. And mate, I sat in the coach's box with them when they played Munster, and it was just brilliant. But I got to see firsthand the environment, and what stood out for me is I sat in on one meeting, Bruce, and they'd had Christmas and they came back in for this meeting before they played Munster. And I've been in so many of these meetings where the coaches walk in and they're just straight to business, right? And it's straight to, right, this is where we are, this is what are we doing here, what are we doing there, and that's cool, right? Because that stuff is important. But Friendly front ended it with, he just picked 2 or 3 people out and said, "How was your Christmas? What was going on? What was the family up to?" And that stuff is everything. That picking on 2 or 3 people in the group and just saying, "How are you? How's it
Right.
getting
Hang
on?"
on. Right. Hold the bus. Right. He did that. Was that premeditated? Was that him creating a sense of belonging, or is that just how he does it?
It's just how he does it, I think, Bruce. I think he cares about people. So, and he actually cares about, right, how are they doing? What are they up to? How was their Christmas? Like, he
So
picked on a couple
that's
of,
him being authentic.
yeah, yeah. And my question is, why, particularly at the professional end of the game, right? It becomes so intense, and this focus on professional, that sometimes it gets forgotten that it's human. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of environments now are getting that right, and there's more getting it right than there were before. But there's still a lot of environments you walk in where you've got this matriarchal Julius Caesar type head coach who's coming in and he's telling everyone how it's done. And I mean, that's bullshit, because what you've got, right, is you've got 35 players who are all in the heat of battle, whether that's in training or in games, who have all these experiences that you don't get as a coach. So why would you not be trying to connect with them at a human level so that they then feel like they can share what's going on in the heat of battle, and you get that connection, that deep connection that I think is really important for performance.
Love it. So you've gone for Coffee with Wayne Smith. You're now working with Friendly. Which player would you love to work with?
I'd love to work with Michael Hooper. I'd love to work with Michael Hooper. And I'm going to say
See,
two here.
right,
Actually, I'm going to put you in
that,
the spot. I'm going to say George Smith in his heyday, and I'm going
yeah,
to say Michael Hooper now.
right. Here you go. Then I'm going to put you on the spot. Why are you picking people that are already that good?
Because I'm going to tell you exactly why, right? Because I heard this story the other day about George Smith, and I'm going to touch on him, right? So George went to Bristol, and I had a coffee with a guy who was the S&C coach at Bristol, and he's now working with Adelaide Crows in AFL. And he was talking to me about George, and he put a question to George day one when he came in, right? He says, George, listen, 2 programs here, mate. You can come in and you can cruise along, and that's cool because you're a world-class player and everything like that. Or I've got a program here that's going to push you. So even though George is world-class, mate, he's not thinking he's world-class. He's thinking, how do I just keep being better than I was the day before? And whether, for me, you've asked me to name a person, but it's not really about naming a person. It's about the type of person. So someone that just comes in and just goes, I want to get better. I want to get better. Can you help me get better? Oh, I can help you. How are you going to help me? I'm just going to ask you some questions. And I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to ask you the questions that allow you to work it out. And that's to go back to that's what I think great coaching is the ability to let people have ownership by the way you interact with them, and then just get your questioning right that makes them think deeply about how they progress and move forward. So that's it, really.
No, I like it. It's a thought in helping them get better, whether they're I mean, Hooper is just off the chart, and Smith is was off the chart. It's an amazing thing.
The reason I say Hooper,
both forwards that you could do lots of contact with.
No scrum though, no scrum. Mate, Hooper's an interesting one as well. The reason I said him is because of leadership. So if I think he's someone, like, as a case study, I'd love to spend some time and look at how he leads. I've seen some clips and videos around how he communicates and interacts, and so I was probably being a bit selfish with him.
The thing I find with Hooper is when Aussie rugby hasn't had consistency, they've had him.
Yeah.
He's maintained unbelievable level of performance, leadership, character, all those things when Australia were under the pump. But then when they go well, Michael Hooper didn't play any better when they were playing well. I think others were able to come up a bit closer to his standard. And he just seems like a typical Aussie. But in all the right ways, but his performance level I just loved. Tunnah, I love it, my man. I'm so a bit like you're telling that story of that guy. I feel so sort of, I know I do. I feel proud and honoured to have been part of it, and that we keep in touch. And we've been talking about this for a long time, and I'm glad we finally nailed it down. And I'm not even going to wish you every success. I'm just going to wish you all the best, because I know you're going to give it everything, and you're going to ask people questions to give you help when you need it, and you're going to push some buttons, and you're going to keep going. So the last question, and I did give you a wee bit of warning of this. For you, happiness is?
Happiness is helping people. I'm going to say 2 things. Sorry, Bruce. Happiness is my family, my girls, and the second is helping people.
And they are someone else. Those 3, 3 ladies. The 3 ladies, bonkers, absolutely off their chump, but brilliant with it. I love them to bits. My girls miss them. Tunnah, all the best, my man. I'll see you somewhere: London, Adelaide, Washington, Gala, Jed, somewhere.
Hopefully somewhere, and hopefully soon, Bruce.
Cheers, my man. Love you.
Great talking to you, mate. Thanks for that.
Cheers, bud. Right.
See you.
Love him. Absolutely love him. Neil Tunnah. I couldn't have predicted it, right? There's people I could have written their names down and put an ambition or a hope or I could not have told you what that man was going to do and what he's achieved, and I admire him for it. I love his single-mindedness. I love the guts he's shown. I love the risks he's taken, and while he's not always got the rewards, he will. I'm confident he will in the end, and he does have an amazing family. They are bonkers, and we'll keep him honest. I hope you've enjoyed it. I certainly have. Hopefully you'll be back for more. You can catch us on Apple, Acast, and Spotify. You can watch on Facebook and YouTube. Tell your friends, leave a review, spread the good news. And if you know Tunnah, drop him a wee comment, because I'm sure he'll get a kick out of it. And whether he believes it or not, his accent definitely has changed. My name is Bruce Aitchison from the Happiness Is podcast. My happiness is egg-shaped, and I look forward to seeing you all somewhere very, very soon. And in the meantime, all the very, very best.